Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington, D.C., and this is our program being taped on the 12th of December. It's 12/12 today, and the first broadcast is going to be on the 13th, and that means St. Lucy's Day. St. Lucy's Day, the 13th of December. Last week we had the St. Nicholas Day program. Now we have St. Lucy's Day, big holiday in Italy, but also in Scandinavia, above all. Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Norway, all these places. Big holiday and a very welcome one at that. But now we have to deal with the ugly realities where we are here in Washington, D.C. And this gets us to the cromnibus, a budget crisis which came, for the average person, I would venture to say, more or less out of nowhere. And we are still on the edge of a shutdown of the U.S. federal government. And equally, or perhaps more important for the long run, we're now beginning to sort out the various factions. And we're going to see in action who is a leader, who is strong, who is good, who's a traitor, who's a hypocrite, who's a faker. And you're going to see who it is. And I have to tell you, we're very critical of Elizabeth Warren. We have got her number. She's a faker. And her leadership is not any good. And you're going to see just in the past couple of days how much we've seen of this. So the cromnibus combines a continuing resolution, in other words, a simple extension of last year's budget into this year or to the coming year, fiscal year, the fiscal year we're now in, which is FY 15. We're already in it. We have been since October 1st. And an omnibus spending bill. So it's a catch-all, grab bag, everything goes in there together on the basis of a continuing resolution. And what Boehner and the Republicans were offering was a cromnibus that would take the government to September 30th, to the end of FY 15, with the exception of the Homeland Security budget. The Republicans, in their frenzy for self-destruction, their racist, bigoted, xenophobic excesses, they want to be able to have a fight about the Obama halt to deportations. They want to stage that fight sometime in February, right, around St. Valentine's Day, I would guess, or something like that. So therefore, that funding would run out. And of course, it's ridiculous, right? These xenophobes, they're supposed to be so worried about terrorism and so worried about the border, and they're going to cut the funding to that. But that's the way it works, and that's fine. Hurry them fast to their doom. Remember that the strategic outlook here is the difference between Republicans and Democrats is that the Republican Party needs to be destroyed first. It needs to be destroyed in place, based on the fact that it's demographically doomed, ideologically doomed too, ideologically, demographically doomed, and the Democratic Party needs to be split. And the split we're talking about is a split between open, blatant Wall Street Democrats on the one hand, and on the other hand, this confused gaggle of people who would say that they're from the New Deal, or they're pro-labor, or they're populist, or they're anti-Wall Street, or Occupy maybe even. But, of course, they have no program and they have no direction. They don't know what they're doing. And this is what it's up to us to provide. And, of course, if you're sick of Democrats at any point, you should try the Tax Wall Street Party, because that is the catalytic force that is going to get these developments going. Now, it turned out that in the 1,600 pages of this rather large bill, there are a couple of extremely offensive things, and above all, the idea that a provision of the Dodd-Frank bill is going to be rolled back. The Dodd-Frank bill, of course, notable for its pathetic weakness, toothlessness, and its many, many years of enactment. In other words, the provisions don't kick in right away. It takes quite a few years for them to kick in. So the idea now is that under the new Cromnibus, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation is going to reacquire liability to bail out zombie banks that have engaged in derivatives speculation. Probably credit default swaps, but not only. So the FDIC will be on the hook for the losses of these banks. Citibank and JP Morgan Chase are prominently mentioned. Goldman Sachs also. They're all considered banks now since 2008. And so the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation will have to pay if Citibank blows itself up with derivative speculation and credit default swaps. FDIC has to pay. What does that mean? FDIC has some money in it. Sure, it has a trust fund. That comes from a fee that is paid by the banks, but that will be exhausted very quickly when the tremendous loss multiplying exponential loss power of these derivatives kicks in. So at that point, the Congress will have to provide money from the general revenue of the United States. So this is a whole new bailout. And the difference with this one is this is a bailout that would not have to be voted in the moment of the panic, when I think a lot of people would say, no, not a second time, no more bailouts for you. You go down, zombie bankers, and you hedge fund hyenas too. This would be automatic because it would be put in place earlier, i.e. now, if they get their way. So this essentially takes us back. It throws out all the lessons of the 2008 crash, which was, of course, a world derivatives panic. Not so much subprime mortgages. That's trivial. World derivatives, 1 to 2 quadrillion, 1,000 trillion of derivatives in notional value were going down. So this became known, and a lot of bad feeling then resulted. Elizabeth Warren came forward. This is the new senator from Massachusetts. We've been following her closely. And said that she urged the people in the House of Representatives, the Democrats there, to vote against it because this was a provision written by Citibank lobbyists, and we have got reports that Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase was calling individual members of Congress, cajoling them, bribing them, in effect, right? You want to become a JP Morgan Chase executive after your time in office? Well, that's what we can imagine is going through their heads, if not out of Dimon's mouth. So that was then put up for a vote last night, and it passed by 6 or 7 votes. Let us also point to the fact that Obama and Biden made telephone calls to Democratic members of the House of Representatives telling them, vote for this bill. And I think he got a total of 57 Democrats to vote for the bill. Boehner, the reactionary leader, lost 67 members of his own caucus. This is partly Tea Party and other extreme right-wing fanatics in the Republican Party didn't want to vote for this for other reasons. A lot of them said it didn't defund Obamacare. It didn't attack immediately on the xenophobic anti-immigrant front, other problems that they had with it. Obviously, these Republicans did not object to the idea of opening the door wide to Citibank and the other zombie banks getting their hands into the FDIC. And that's funny because that was one of the original issues of the Tea Party. The Tea Party was supposed to be anti-bailout. This time, back in a minute. So the Cromnibus passed last night on its bipartisan vote. It was Pelosi joining with Elizabeth Warren, telling the Democratic members, in effect, I'm not voting for it, neither should you. Notice, however, Pelosi did not invoke a full Democratic whipping operation saying, don't vote for this. The party demands that you not vote for it. She didn't go into action And it turned out that although Pelosi voted against it, Steny Hoyer voted for it. Clyburn voted for it. Congressman Delaney here in the Washington suburbs, a financier, he voted for it. Marcy Kaptur voted for it. That's really distasteful. And apparently the way that this provision, reopening the federal coffers to the hands of the zombie bankers, that was put in there by Barbara Mikulski of Maryland, right? The supposed blue collar. She says she's the only blue collar member of the Senate. Well, this is not very blue, is it, Mikulski? So that leaves a very, very bad taste. So Obama, Biden saying vote for it. Pelosi saying I'm not voting for it. So it did pass. And the 67 votes that Boehner lost were almost made up by the 57 Democrats that he gained. So everybody's saying, oh, what a profile in courage by Elizabeth Warren. Well, I'm afraid not. Just a couple of little things first. When she came on, I guess, MSNBC or one of these cable programs, and to explain what was happening, she was asked, who put this in there? And she said, the Republicans. Well, yeah. It's a joint negotiation. There are House appropriators, but there are Senate appropriators too. And the head of the Senate Appropriations Committee has been Barbara Mikulski. So without Mikulski, it couldn't have gotten in there. And we also have to point to a monstrous group of 8 Democrats. We find out about this in Mother Jones back in April of 2013. Democrats are undermining Wall Street reform too. And I won't go through all the different things that they talk about, but the ringleader of this seems to be Jim Himes, Himes. Then we have Congresswoman Fudge and the following names: Carney, Moore, Maloney, Peters, McIntyre, and Scott. This is the effete 8. And all of them have come forward in some way or other proposing to water down the already pathetically weak barriers erected by Dodd-Frank, if it ever comes into effect, because it's being fought at every stage and will undoubtedly now be sabotaged further by these Republicans. So Elizabeth Warren fudged it by saying that the Republicans were the only ones who put it in. It's a combination of Mikulski and then this other elite, the effete 8 group. And now, of course, what do? Elizabeth Warren is like saying, I'll be leading you from behind. House Dems, you go into the breach, but I'm back here in the Senate. What I'm demanding, is a filibuster. I want to see Elizabeth Warren get up there and match or exceed little Rand Paul or Ted Cruz or any other reactionary Republican who's been standing up there on whatever issues they had. I want to see Elizabeth Warren stand up there, be like that woman in the Texas legislature who stood up all night to filibuster some bill, I guess it was an abortion bill in that case, that she didn't like. Let's see Elizabeth Warren get in there and fight and be acrimonious, not bipartisan, but acrimonious, the kind of thing that some of her petty bourgeois, good government, prim supporters don't like. And I want to see Bernie Sanders with her. I want to see the team of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders get in there, and then I want to see them bring in people like Sherrod Brown, that wonderful populist, he says, from Ohio, or Merkley from Oregon. Those guys are supposedly big enemies of derivatives. Let's see it. Stand up and filibuster. Fight, damn you. And, of course, if they don't, if Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and these others do not, then we realize what we're dealing with here, that this is a dog and pony show, that this is a right, or in this case, the left wing of the Hillary Clinton campaign. We saw in the previous cycle, how Romney needed a left wing man and a right-wing man. The right-wing man happened to be little Ron Paul, the leprechaun. But on the left wing, it was that guy Huntsman. So he had blockers going for him. He had wingmen on both sides. And I think Hillary has that now in the form of Elizabeth Warren. So don't give your heart to Elizabeth Warren. Let's see her fight. Now, in terms of what we are dealing with here, we're going to be very critical of Elizabeth Warren because we have to be. First of all, MoveOn.org. MoveOn.org, notoriously coming from the Soros orbit, has now had their online referendum, and they're going to be backing Elizabeth Warren. So I say, if the campaign for Elizabeth Warren in New Hampshire and other places, which she still disavows, right? She says this is not her. This is other people, self-starters that she can't control, that she doesn't coordinate with. If MoveOn.org provides her campaign in New Hampshire, I can guarantee you who's going to control her administration if she ever became president. And that person is Soros. George Soros would control an Elizabeth Warren administration. Reminds me a little bit of Zephyr Teachout in New York State in the gubernatorial race, just the previous month now. Zephyr Teachout was officially on the board, the advisory board of the Soros group of foundations. So that doesn't look too good. Don't give your heart away to that. And we've also seen how Elizabeth Warren started with a promising proposal to finance, not to refinance, I'm afraid, but just to finance for 1 year student loans at 0.75% through the discount window of the Federal Reserve. And she dropped that like a hot potato when the bigwigs of the Democratic Party said no, cease and desist. Notice now that Elizabeth Warren is technically in the Democratic Senate leadership with Harry Reid and Durbin and Schumer and Patty Murray and the rest of them. So this is a very dubious proposition. Don't go down that road. We'll be back in a minute. The third segment of World Crisis Radio, and once again it's St. Lucy's Day, the 13th of December. We're recording on the 12th. All right, so here's what we want. Let's have the litmus test for Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, both of them presidential candidates, and that guy Jim Webb. He can also join in, right? He's not in the Senate anymore, but he can support them. He can come and hold their coat. He can come on the Senate floor. He's an ex-senator. Here's what we want. We want a filibuster. Filibuster the Cromnibus unless and until the FDIC open door to be looted by Citibank and zombie banks, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and, of course, J.P. Morgan. We want that filibustered. That's for you, Elizabeth Warren, and you, Bernie Sanders. We also want Elizabeth Warren to stop pretending that the Republicans are the only ones doing this stuff. How about Himes, Fudge, Carney, Moore, Maloney, Scott, Peters, McIntyre, Wall Street Democrats, the absolute essence of Wall Street Democrats. And then here's the other problem. The rhetoric from the Democrats is, oh, Wall Street zombie bankers, you can go ahead and speculate with credit default swaps if you want to, but you can't do it with public FDIC insurance. Yeah, okay, but credit default swaps are derivatives. They're illegal. And here's why. A credit default swap is one of two things. It's either gambling or it's insurance. If it's gambling, then the zombie bank that puts them out, or hedge fund hyena, that zombie institution is essentially functioning as a gambling casino, but it doesn't have the right, it doesn't have the license to be a gambling casino. Same thing on the insurance side. If it's insurance, well, you don't have the prerequisites to be an insurance company. You're not registered. You don't have reinsurance. You don't have any of that. And the people who are dealing in this have no insurable interest. You can't simply take out, in the old practice, you can't be at an arm's length from afar and say, I'm going to put $1 million life insurance policy on that guy. You can't do that unless you're a member of the family or some insurable interest. Maybe he's a key man in your corporation. That's perhaps possible. But you get the idea. Credit default swaps are illegal. It's either gambling or it's insurance, and the companies that put them out are neither one. So that's important. Now, of course, campaign finance, right? We are not such fools here as to think you could build a mass movement under depression conditions based on campaign finance reform. But this, of course, is an evil, right? We're against it. They've multiplied by 10 the amount that a fat cat can give to the Democratic or Republican national committees. I guess it's only them. I wonder if you can give that to the Tax Wall Street Party. We'll be interested to know. It goes from about 32,400 to 10 times that, 324,000. So that's obviously not good. A couple of other things is that pensions are undermined. If you have a multi-sponsor pension that is covered by the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, you're going to get clipped. And if certain circumstances obtain, then you're really going to get clipped under this thing. So there's lots of bad stuff in there. We would focus for the moment on closing the door to a future bailout. Notice that in this debate, there were no Republicans standing up there saying, we demand that Citibank be able to get insured through FDIC when they do speculation, right? If they speculate and they win, then they keep the super profits. But if they lose, the taxpayers have to pay. No Republicans would come out in the light of day and argue in favor. The Republican line was, this is the compromise. You have to stick to the compromise. And then we go back. Mikulski, how could you? Himes, he had put this forward as a standalone bill. It was called To Help Farmers. To Help Farmers. Okay, these are Wall Street Democrats. And again, the Mikulski blue-collar pedigree means absolutely nothing. So, of course, what we were calling for, if you look at my Twitter from yesterday, it's vote no, vote no, vote no, vote no in this turkey. Don't vote for it. If you vote against it, you force the Republicans to embrace it and hasten their destruction as a political party. So this is the hypocrisy of the Republicans. Boehner says, I want these provisions for Wall Street, but I'm going to force the Democrats to vote for them. I'm sorry, Democrats, that's where you got to say no. And again, if you're sick of the Democratic Party, and aren't we all, try the Tax Wall Street Party, and you will be, I think, on the whole, much happier. So this is going forward. We're operating right now, as I speak to you, on a 48-hour continuing resolution. It just pushes everything into Friday to Saturday. The Senate is doing a defense bill. Then they're going to come up to this $1 trillion cromnibus. And we want to see some fighting. And we don't want to see Elizabeth Warren saying, you House members go out there and get mowed down, but I'm going to stay here in my comfortable, clubby Senate, right, where everything is so traditional and such an old boy atmosphere. All right. So that's the first thing. And, of course, from the Tax Wall Street Party point of view, ban credit default swaps, outlaw them with severe penalties, outlaw and ban collateralized debt obligations. Even the Goldman Sachs guy had conceded that might be a good idea. And tax all derivatives, all with a 1% Wall Street sales tax. So you want to see an answer, right? A programmatic policy that would get you out of this. We have it. All that Elizabeth Warren is offering is a little bit of a fake fight to at least delay it, but that's not enough. So also be aware of what I'm telling you. Elizabeth Warren is looking more and more like the left wing of a Hillary campaign, where she's out there to make sure that no challenge emerges from that vast area of the Democratic Party, which is to the left of Hillary Clinton, the warmonger, the Wall Street Democrat par excellence. Now, let us look at the world strategic situation. Let's look at Syria, because I think we've had the picture that we've been putting forward in the last couple of months is now being confirmed heavily. You will notice if you go to tarpley.net that I've been attacking General Allen, the Allen Petraeus clique, who are demanding the bombing of Assad. That was the headline on December 7th. On the November 29th, we had ISIS czar Allen ousts Hagel from the Pentagon, and the policy, once again, the McCain policy: don't bomb ISIS, bomb Assad, right? Spare the real terrorists and bomb an existing government that's actually fighting on your side. The November 22nd, we were registering the Brisbane no, right? When Obama was asked, are you doing a policy review on bombing Assad? And the one-word answer from Obama was no. And that freaked out quite a few neocons and humanitarian bombers. And then we were back to November 15th, post-election war coup. GOP chairman Ed Royce of House Foreign Affairs touts a policy review, which is the latest Kerry, Allen, McCain, Petraeus effort to bomb Assad and save ISIS. So I've been trying to point to this, and it's still going on. Still going on. Back in a minute.